Get in on the action and make your bet with Sports Interaction. The F1 schedule is heating up. Will you go with the reliable and Max Verstappen, or take your chance with a potential surprise? Download the app in Ontario. Use the QR code you see at the bottom of your screen somewhere, or head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN to get started. 19 plus, please play responsibly. Indy 500 post-qualifying reaction pod, and we've got some big news out of F1. This is Nailing the Apex. I'm Tim Hauraney. Please head on over to Spotify, give us a 5-star rating and a follow. Same goes for Apple Podcasts. Write a review. Let us know how we're doing. If you want more from me, you can get me on social media at Tim Hauraney. Let's start with Formula One. Is Lewis Hamilton leaving Mercedes for Ferrari? Well, the Daily Mail published late Sunday evening that Ferrari is set to offer Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time Formula One world champion, around $50 million USD to join the Scuderia for the 2024 season. Hamilton is in a contract year, and talks have been going slowly with Mercedes, but I've been in a couple of these media sessions, and Total Wolf has assured us on many occasions that he wants Lewis Hamilton back at the team for next year. And then Lewis has also been very vocal about coming back to Mercedes and possibly finishing his career there. So I think for Mercedes, it's important for them that, Lewis wins his 8th driver's title while racing for them. There's so many things that goes into this. Obviously having that driver is huge, the marketing opportunities that come with it as well. And now this report comes out of nowhere and suggests that Ferrari president John Elkann is in close contact with Lewis Hamilton, even though we're in a cost cap era, you may be wondering, how does this, or how would it affect Ferrari's bottom line when it comes to the cost cap? This signing wouldn't impact them on that front. This signing would be on a different set of books, and it would have very little impact on their cost cap. The only thing that really affects the cost cap is what you do with the race car, how you build it, your wind tunnel, your CFD, the things you put into it. So things like marketing, drivers, certain team personnel, all of those things are off of the cost cap, so they do not count towards it. So Ferrari could literally back the Brinks truck up to Lewis and unload a bunch of cash to him and say, come on over. Here's the thing. I think if you're Ferrari, let's just start with Ferrari. I think if you're Ferrari, you can't just hope that, signing a driver as great as Lewis Hamilton, 7-time Formula One world champion, fixes your problems. In fact, it may create more problems for you. Ferrari has other issues I think that they need to solve and fix, like fixing their car, getting the right people in place for the jobs that are available at the team. They've had a lot of turnover at Ferrari since Frederick Vasseur has taken over the position of team principal. And he too himself has a mountain to climb to get this car competitive again. And we've spoken about it many times on this podcast, about the work that has to go on behind the scenes at Ferrari to get this team back to its championship winning ways. And I think shaking up your driver core, well, it's not gonna do much. It's not gonna do much good if the things happening behind the scenes are as rocky as they are. I doubt a driver change is really high on Frederick Vasseur's list. He's got a mountain of other things that he needs to look at and accomplish. So the drivers for Ferrari, who would leave? right? So you got Carlos Sainz. We'll start there. He's been performing pretty good since he's been there. I honestly think Carlos has turned a lot of people's opinion about him and his driving around. I think that he's gained a ton of respect. It's one of the things I've always said about Carlos Sainz. He's extremely talented. And once he starts to figure things out, he's very, very fast. He's under contract for next season. Why would you pay to get him out of the car? He's done a great job. He's done a really good job this season. Why would you just unload a driver like that? I mean, it doesn't make sense to me. He's been with the team now for three seasons, and that doesn't make sense to me because you're then going to bring in, a very highly qualified racing driver, a legend in the sport, to bring them in. But it's going to take Lewis time to get up to speed, right? I mean, you don't just plug drivers into a team and then all of a sudden be like, go fast. That's not how it works. I mean, the drivers take time. It takes time to get comfortable. They take time to learn their surroundings, learn the people they're working with, learn the car, learn the steering wheel and what all it does, learn the different systems that Formula One teams have, because they all have different systems and different structures. So I don't necessarily think that's a good idea or good option of just getting rid of Carlos Sainz. And I don't think it's a good idea for Charles Leclerc to go either. He doesn't come off the books until the end of 2024. I mean, how do you have, these two... How would you have Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc at the same team? You have two alpha dogs at the same team. It doesn't make any sense. Why would you want to do that? They've already made it known that they want to build a team around Charles Leclerc. I mean, that's recent. That just came out like last month. And I think with Charles Leclerc, Ferrari already has their driver who they can build a race team around. No offense to Carlos Sainz, because I think he's incredible, and I also think he could be a world champion one day. My thoughts on all of this. I mean, if I'm Lewis Hamilton and I'm comfortable at the team that I'm at and I'm going to get good money, I don't think I would just leave to go to a team just because they are like a legendary team, like obviously Ferrari is. I wonder, these are just my personal opinion, I wonder if this is something maybe from Hamilton's camp, maybe to get him a bit more money from Mercedes. Could be that. Who knows? Ferrari is a team that the Hamiltons have, dreamed of racing for since jumping into Formula One. But I think at the end of the day, it boils down to this. For Hamilton, he needs to be in a championship-winning car and team. He's 38. He's not getting any younger. And he needs, I think, a stable team that will give him the equipment to go out and do what he needs to do. At this moment, I think you would have to say that that's Mercedes. And no offense to Ferrari, because, obviously they're a great team as well. I just feel for Ferrari at this point, they're a few years away from being that championship-winning team now that Mattia Binotto has gone and they've brought Fred in and they've had to restructure a bunch of things. It's a lot of work to just turn a Formula One team around like this. It's not something that's done in a couple months. It's something that's done in years. For Mercedes, essentially they have their technical infrastructure already aligned and ready to go. They've just taken a wrong turn on the highway, and now they need to just circle back and get on to a different on-ramp. And that's essentially for Mercedes' issues. I think for Mercedes, they're going to be able to fix their problems faster, and I think they're going to be able to get back up to those championship-winning ways that we've seen from them for the last many years. Let's jump over to the Indy 500. absolute scenes in qualifying on Sunday. If you didn't see it, actually Saturday, Sunday, but if you didn't see it, oh my God. Absolutely incredible. Storylines, amazing. The driving, out of this world. The things that these drivers are doing at the Brickyard this year is absolutely blowing my mind. And IndyCar, the racing, the just all of it is just so good right now. It's so good. I mean, you have to check it out. Trust me. Let's talk about Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, because for me, that was the biggest story out of all of the Indy 500 qualifying over the weekend. And, you know, I'll try and break down qualifying as best as I can here. So on Saturday, it's a 2-day event, Saturday and Sunday. Saturday, all 34 cars competed in qualifying. And essentially, from Saturday, you get 13th to 30th position, and those are the drivers that are basically locked into the 500. Okay, they've got a spot, and they're good to go. And then you've got your top 12 drivers. They're locked in for Sunday's top 12 shootout and the Fast Six. So top 12 shootout. They take the fastest 6 drivers from the top 12 shootout and they advance to what's called the Fast Six. 6 drivers battling for pole position for the Indy 500. Now, at the back, you've got only a few spots available, and there's 33 spots in total. You've essentially got 30th to 33rd spots, and there are only 4 drivers who were competing. So there was going to be one driver who was not going to be able to get into the Indy 500. 3 of those drivers race for Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, who I think all of us thought that coming into this season, that was going to be a team that was going to challenge the big 3. They were going to be like into the big 4, let's call it. But they were going to be very competitive. Very great driver lineup as well. So we'll start at the beginning of their story. I mean, they recently opened a new 100,000 square foot factory headquarters just a bit north of Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and they began a very aggressive recruiting drive. I mean, in the offseason, they hired away from McLaren Formula One team the director of vehicle performance, Stefano Sordo, and appointed him the director of vehicle performance at the team. Now, prior to the McLaren F1 team, Sordo worked for a number of years at Red Bull Racing as the head of aero performance. Then RLL pulled away from Honda. Their performance development executive, Steve Erickson, named him the team's COO. Now, I thought they were going to be in for big things, like I had mentioned, spend a lot of money in the offseason, and it's been a disaster. I mean, especially on the ovals. I mean, Texas was a struggle, and now here at IMS, that it was a struggle there as well. Their cars, slowest of everyone's. I mean, what led to this was, 3 of their cars dropping into the dreaded bump day. Christian Lundgaard, Graham Rahal, Jack Harvey, Catherine Legg. She was the only one on the team who was able to get herself out of that last chance qualifying and into the Indy 500. And most thought it would be I think Jack Harvey, who was going to be the one on the outside looking in, coming into this thing. I thought actually it was going to be the rookie from Dale Coyne, Stingray Robb. I just simply thought that the experience of Lundgaard, the experience of Graham, and the experience of Jack was going to get those three cars into the Indy 500, and I didn't think Stingray was going to be able to push his way in. What happened on Sunday, absolutely incredible television, but also, a bit of a heartbreaking story at the same time. Though, for those who don't know, IndyCar legend Bobby Rahal co-owns the team with David Letterman, entrepreneur Mike Lanigan. So Bobby Rahal's son is Graham Rahal, who came up through the ladder system. Actually, he was right behind me. Very skilled driver, very, very fast. And Jack Harvey is a driver who also fought his way into IndyCar, doing part-time rides here and there, most notably with Meyershank Racing, and he eventually worked his way into a full-time IndyCar ride with Meyershank Racing. And then he was hired by Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing on a full-time deal, with them partnering one of his best friends. So Jack and Graham are very close friends, okay? And 2022, well, that was Jack's first full season with RLL. It was a bit of a struggle. I think it was a struggle for all three of their drivers at the time, with Lundgaard, I would say, being the most competitive of the three in 2022. And then 2023, it's been not so different, and they've spent, like I said off the top, a lot of money here, and they've really been aggressive with their recruiting, and I honestly thought this was really going to bring them a lot of success early, but this may not be something that we actually see develop for this team until next year or the year after. It may actually take a lot longer than a lot of us thought. Coming into this year's Indy 500, I was expecting, the rookies and those who don't race much in IndyCar to be in the back of the pack, not Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan. So Sunday, all three drivers in bump day. Timing's running out in qualifying. Jack Harvey is on the outside looking in. Lundgaard and Rahal, well, they're in. Rahal is just hanging on to that 33rd spot, final spot, on the grid. And by just hanging on. His 4-lap qualifying average speed, 229.1 miles an hour. He was also suffering with a malfunctioning weight jacker issue as well, which essentially makes his 4-lap quali run a very scary and a very wild ride. He's just hanging on to the race car during those laps, and I'll explain the weight jacker a little bit later in the podcast and how it works, but it's a very handy tool that the drivers use. So Harvey goes out and takes a few stabs at trying to bump his way into the last and final spot that's occupied by his friend Graham Rahal. But every attempt Harvey takes at this thing, it's just not enough. The car is painfully slow. He was just 1 mile an hour on a 4-lap average, slower than Stingray Robb, who occupied the 32nd spot. Now, just minutes left in qualifying. Harvey takes, what we all thought at the time, one last stab at qualifying, hangs the thing out there on a knife's edge. 4-lap average shows 228.9 miles per hour. Not fast enough. Remember, what was Graham Rahal's 4-lap average speed? It was 229.1 miles an hour. So for Jack, just missing out. So, Harvey, literally seconds left on the clock in qualifying, quickly pits. He slaps on a set of tires, It's the last Hail Mary attempt for him. He goes back out. And at this point, I'm like, well, Graham won't have another chance at qualifying. So whatever Jack does here, Graham's not going to be able to answer back. So he's stuck. So that is it. So he's literally in his car watching on an iPad what's going on here. Okay? Where's Jack? What's Jack doing? So Harvey, race against the clock, gets back out in the dying seconds, puts the car on the limit. It's basically roll this thing into a ball or qualify for the Indy 500. Graham's dad and team owner, Bobby Rahal, also there watching on in the pit stands as to what Jack may do. He knows that Graham won't have another chance to answer back either. So Jack's lap 1 comes across the line, 229.4 miles an hour. That will do it, but there will also be tire degradation. And remember, it's a 4-lap average. Okay, so he's got 4 laps. He's got to get this thing done. It's got to be whatever that average is at the end of those 4 laps. That's what it's going to be. So, tire degradation. For qualifying for the Indy 500, tire degradation is huge because the tire drops off quite quickly. So your lap 1 is pretty solid. Car feels good. And the speed's going to be there. It gives you a lot of confidence. But that speed and the handling and the balance of the race car, it starts to deteriorate and drop off as the tire begins to deg. So lap 2, Jack comes across the line. 229.0 miles an hour. He lost, let me see if I get this right, lost 0.4 of a mile an hour to the previous lap. Here we go. Lap 3. Car definitely not happy. Tires are screaming at you. They're saying, F you, we want to get this thing over with. 229.17 miles an hour. Jack goes tiny bit faster than lap 2, which is a little unheard of for this round of IndyCar qualifying, because as we've seen over Saturday and Sunday, very hard to keep the third lap faster than the second lap. Usually it just starts to get slower and slower and slower as you start to get along. But Jack able to just make it go a tiny bit faster. Lap 4. All right. Tires, toast. Have to be. As a driver, you're hanging on to this thing for dear life. Literally. Harvey crosses the line. 228.971 miles an hour. 4-lap average. Jack's 4-lap average is 229.166 miles per hour. Now we look quickly at what Graham has done. His best friend, what did he do? 229.159 miles per hour. Harvey bumps Rahal out of the Indy 500 by 7/1000ths of a mile an hour. You can't make this stuff up, people. You just can't. It's unbelievable. Rahal breaks down in tears. No big celebrations from Jack either, because he just knocked his friend out of the Indy 500. It's only the second time in the sport's history that a Rahal has not participated in the Indy 500 while as an active driver. His dad, Bobby, bumped from the Indy 500, believe it was 30 years to the day. I think it was 1993's Indy 500. Graham's dad, Bobby, got bumped out of that race. Graham, however, he handled this thing like a champion. I think he handled it as best as any athlete could. He thanked his team for all of their hard work, acknowledged some of the flaws, acknowledged that they were not fast this year at all. He couldn't come to finish the post-race interview. He broke down in tears. His wife and kids there to console him. Jack made sure to find his friend. The two hugged it out. Neither driver will ever forget this day. Ever. this is going to be something that will live with them for forever. Just unbelievable. I didn't know how to feel when I watched it. I mean, I was absolutely shocked to see that Graham Rahal wasn't going to be the Indy 500. I was shocked to see that it was Jack Harvey who had bumped him out. Unbelievable. I felt so bad for both drivers to be put in that situation. That's racing. I get it. I mean, look, that's racing. But man, oh man, what an hour of television. I mean, and give it up for the NBC people. I mean, they did a great job. Incredible broadcast. It was great. It was absolutely great. So, what exactly is going on with the RLL cars? That's my question. Graham has said that there is an inherent speed issue with the cars, but at this moment, I mean, doesn't seem like anybody really knows what's happening down there with those cars. I've always hoped for good things with that team because I really want to see them do well. They put a lot of work into this. Graham has committed a ton of his time and dedication and work, and putting a ton of that into this team. And I think it's got to be busy for him. I think he's almost like running part of this team. Plus, he's got to be focused on a racing driver. Plus, he's probably got to be focused on the marketing side of things at the same time, making sure everyone's doing their thing. And he's got to train as well. And then he's got the media obligations. And I mean, this can't be easy for Graham. I mean, I think he's got a lot on his plate. But at the same time, I mean, he drove a hell of a stint, 4-lap average, with a broken weight jacker or fast jacker, whatever you want to call them. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what weight jackers are and how important they are. So on the steering wheel, if you were watching the 500 qualifying coverage, you could see the drivers were playing around on the steering wheel when they got to straightaways. They were pressing a button while coming out of turn 2, heading down into turn 3, and then they'd hit a button again, and then they would be coming out of turn 4, they'd hit a button again, and then going into turn 1, they'd hit a button again. So what they're doing is they're adjusting the weight jacker, or the fast jacker, and essentially is you're going to hit that, the driver's going to hit that button, and the right rear shock is I don't want to mess this up. It's like a hydraulic component that lengthens and shortens the shock. So the button the drivers are pressing, coming in and out of those turns is to engage the hydraulic device to lengthen or shorten the shock. So the shock that's at the right rear of the car. So the weight jacker essentially is, how do I explain this? It uses a cross weight. So the hydraulic system and shock to lengthen the right rear shock is to add, weight across the car to the front left. So I guess it would be diagonal. So you're adding weight from right rear to left front. Okay. Now the hydraulic pressure, so that's built up, and then when the driver is ready to use the system, so hit the button, it quickly forces pressure through the system to extend the shock. Now, hopefully I got all this right. I'm pretty sure I do. So, I mean, why would a driver do this? I mean, essentially it's a tool that helps the drivers with the turn-in phase of the corner, to help give the front left tire a bit more bite, and helps so the driver is not having to turn the wheel too much. So if you're getting understeer, you don't want that because you're scrubbing speed at that point when you're getting understeer. And again, if there's too much front end, the driver will have to go the opposite way on the weight jacker, so shorten the shock up a bit and remove some of that compressed weight on the front left tire. Now you maybe asking then, why are drivers pressing the weight jacker button on corner exits? So as soon as you see a driver coming out of corner 2, hitting the button again. So as the driver's coming out of corner 2 at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, they will want to hit that weight jacker button immediately. Okay, that lets out the pressure that the hydraulic pump has forced in, and essentially it loosens things up a bit. Okay, so the car would then squat down more on the rear. So as you're coming out of turn 2, you want to hit that button. It's going to squat down a bit more. You're going to have a long straightaway heading to turn 3. And what this is doing is giving you a pretty big aerodynamic advantage. So when the car squats down at the rear, the front tires are coming up a bit. And essentially it's decreasing the amount of downforce that the car is running and freeing it up to go faster in a straight line. Now, as they approach turn 3, drivers hit the button and that weight jacker button, and that will fire the pressure up again and through the shock system, engages the downforce again, so you get that cross weight happening where the right rear and left front puts the weight back to the front left tire and right rear. It's a really innovative system that they've developed over quite a few. These teams, actually, I should say, these teams have developed over quite a few years. And the bigger teams, I think their systems may fire a bit quicker, only because they have the money and the resources and the time to invest in that type of equipment to make it as fast as possible. So when a driver hits it, they're not, waiting a few seconds for it to engage. It's happening, immediately. So the faster they can get that system working and reliable, the better off they're going to be. They're going to gain that tiny little bit of an edge or an advantage. And that's what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about really fine details when you get to a super speedway or an oval like Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The littlest of things are exaggerated at these tremendous speeds that these drivers are going at. And usually this device is only used at big ovals like the Motor Speedway, the Brickyard. Congratulations to Alex Palou. I mean, he was magnificent. I called it. Head on over to my Twitter. You can check that out. I called Alex Palou for pole before he said it. It's going to be a great race. The qualifying, if it's anything like qualifying weekend was, I think it's going to be an incredible event. It's going to be absolutely bonkers. I can't wait. I know Monaco's this weekend as well, and we'll be doing some podcasts for that. And hopefully going to try and get a couple IndyCar drivers on this week to build up some of that lead into the 500. Just watching qualifying, seeing what these guys are doing now and this year, it's unbelievable. I just can't believe it. I can't believe what they're able to do now and how fast they're going. It's just, it's incredible. Some of these guys just absolute passengers in these cars this year too. At some points, got some questions. Actually, we got one from Mike Adams. How different will the cars be in race setup versus qualifying? That's a good question. I think, one of the main things with qualifying, and we'll just talk about the cars there, is like you want to try and make sure they're as trimmed out as possible. So the more you trim the car out, the slipperier it's going to be, and it's going to be a lot faster. But you can't really race that. That's a very difficult thing to do. The tires dag way too fast. They don't last very long. The engine mapping, so the fuel mapping as well. Full boost, the thing's a rocket ship. For racing, you want to tune it down a bit. You want to make sure the car is going to be reliable. You want to make sure it's going to get to the end. You want to make sure there's proper amount of downforce on there so the driver's comfortable, but the driver can also make passes happen. So it's a big setup change between the two of them, and then obviously it being aero-driven, it's going to be a huge aero setup in that regard. So hopefully that answers your question, Mike. God, I love the Indy 500. It's incredible. So yes, Formula One this week coming up. We'll have more stuff going on. If you want more from me, you can get me at Tim Hauraney in all forms of social media. You've been listening to Nailing the Apex. Please head on over to Spotify. Give us a 5-star rating and a follow. Same goes with Apple Podcasts. Write a review. Helps us grow the pod a lot. And we'll talk to you all later in the